All right. Welcome, Townsend. Bam. I'm so excited. This is my capstone for the executive coaching and consulting program. Oh gosh, master's program. And I'm so excited to be here. But what the first thing that you need to know about me is that I am a child of God and I am loved and cherished by him and those around me. And I haven't always been able to say that, but more about that later. First, I skipped, hold on. First, I have to talk about these people, because these people have loved me. They've supported me. They're my husband. You'll see my husband, you'll see my kids, you'll see my friends, you'll see my pastors, you'll see my mentor. And I have to name drop Michelle Thompson because I would not be here without her encouragement, begging me to do this for so many years. So because of her endless encouragement, because of the sacrifice from all these people, I was able to heal a lot of these relationships that needed to be healed. And this has allowed us to thrive. And I can say I am growing and developing into the person God created me to be. And I'm on a journey to reach my full potential because of that. Whew, I'm going to get through. So through the teaching of the Townsend model, I learned to heal. And I learned and am growing into my character and competency. I've learned to ask as well as provide the relational nutrients needed to foster growth and produce good fruit. So digging in to the soil. First and foremost, I learned more about grace. I learned to give grace to myself. I learned to give grace to others. I learned to judge less, judge myself less, and I learned to judge other people less. I learned to internalize the truth that God had for me and stop listening to the lies that followed me from my childhood. I've learned to help others to learn their truth, that truth also through coaching. I've also learned that you can't rush this because it takes time to nurture the relationships and provide the soil nutrients for that change to happen. Before the Institute, my character capacities there were deficits in every single one, because of the trauma that I had received in childhood. This had left me depressed, and with a diffused sense of identity and the direction in my life. I was in desperate need of healing. My attachment was the worst, because I learned in my childhood through trauma, through parents that did not provide the unconditional love that I needed. I learned that people weren't safe. And this presented itself in one area of my life that was significant, in the fact that I never wanted to be alone, even as an adult. Because when I was alone, the voices in my head would remind me how little value I had. And I would listen. But now I have learned to have trusting relationships where I can be vulnerable, and I don't need to protect myself. I'm now able to be alone because the voices have been replaced with that new value, as that child of God and loved by others around me. In the past, in my separation, I had learned that I am only acceptable if others accepted me, and I would perform to make that happen. That's the only way that they would value me. That's the only way they would love me. That's the voices would tell me. Now I've learned that I can have different opinions. I've learned that other people can have their own feelings, their own thoughts, and those are separate from the way that I think, and that's okay. That's been a sheer miracle of God. I've also learned in integration, I had the understanding that I was damaged goods and that there was little or no hope for me. This is what I was told. I have since learned that I have good parts, I have bad parts, and it's okay. I'm loved in the midst of those good parts and those bad parts. And I've also learned that other people have good and they have bad, and I can love them in the midst of both. In integration, I had learned that I was less than and that I had no power because of my relationship with my father, where he was emotionally abusive and overbearing. And so I learned what I didn't want to do. I did. I learned from him to be an overbearing person at times. And I had also learned to not submit to authority. And so those adulthood authority ways that I had were not productive. So I have since repented of my overstepping in my authority, and I now can submit to appropriate authority in my life. All right, all this produces good fruit by growing my character, by placing the broken and bruised parts of myself at the feet of Jesus. This has brought me back to life. I just have seen it bring me back to life. It's allowed me to dream. It's allowed me to live a better future for myself as well as those around me. And this has led to that great fruit. The people in my life, I've grown in my personal and professional relationships where we have mutual safety and vulnerability that I never thought possible. The person that I am, I have grown as a person who is thriving because I make good choices where I used to make bad choices in my thoughts, my values, my behaviors, my emotions. I never thought that was possible. In my performance, I've always been a perfectionist, and that was to my detriment. That was to perform. I was desperate to find value. So I learned how to achieve and overachieve for myself as well as for others. But my perfectionist character no longer gets in the way of my healthy performance because I have balance with that, and I'm no longer performing to receive. In my competency, the first skill that I learned is actually it's a differentiation between coaching and consulting. That was the biggest thing I needed to learn in this program. I entered this program and I didn't know the difference between them. I learned that coaching is actually helping the client draw out the solutions that are already inside them, that we are just to help them pull those out and to reflect. That the client sets the agenda. And so this coaching mindset is core competency too. And so that was the biggest area that I grew first in. And then in consulting, we use those skills to provide ideas and solutions to the client. Big differentiation there. Let's see, my emotional regulation, I think has been the star of the show as well. I practice yoga and mindfulness, and this has allowed me to foster a mind-body connection that has provided me to have presence and containment for my clients. And I've been told that this is my greatest asset, to help people feel at ease. And this is core competency number 5, which is the coaching presence. And so that's my biggest area. Another area that I have grown in competency in is the conflict resolution. Dr. Townsend's 8 steps to conflict resolution model has been key in our lives. Everyone, all the lives around me as well. That for you stance, bookended, has made all the difference in any of those conversations that were a little bit tense or just needed to have that conflict resolution and hearing them out for the win. Okay, what's next? What's next is I need 60 more hours toward ICF certification. So it's focus on getting those hours so that I can apply for that certification and move forward in getting that certification. I look forward to providing the staff of Pathfinder Church and serving them in fostering a positive work culture. I think I'm the one to do it. I feel like God's telling me to do this, and I'm like, are you sure? Okay, we're gonna do this. But I look forward to just helping all our staff and our members and our volunteers to be able to grow in their personal and professional lives. I will be starting my own little business, which is rooting for growth. Yeah, rooting for growth. Lisa Schmidt Coaching and Consulting. And with that, I will have personal and professional development and life coaching and as well as executive coaching. And I will be doing a niche that is very challenging because it's little known. I will be looking into further developing an equestrian coaching business. So this is coaching with horses, and it is using the keen attunement that horses have naturally to see beyond, using the horses that actually see what lies beneath before my clients even see that, and helping that them comfortably helping them get this out. I also look forward to continue to learn and be part of groups, mentor groups, professional groups moving forward to where we can attend workshops. We can just continue to grow and develop in our professional lives. And I look for continued healing with my counselor, because that's never done. Legacy. What is my legacy? God placed this legacy on my heart over 20 years ago, and it hasn't changed. And my legacy is to make a difference in the lives of those around me. And I do that by striving to create an environment where people feel safe and where beautiful things can happen in that safety, and that we can take root with new ideas, with new solutions to help them grow in their lives and be all that they can be. So there's my legacy.
Lisa.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
I got through it.
Chill bumps. I have chill bumps.
Yeah. I was fighting back tears.
I know, and tears.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
How are we supposed to get through this without crying? I mean,
yeah, I did it.
You did it. You did great.
I cried before, so yeah, it was a little short, but
no,
it's great.
A little short.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can ask a couple questions, right?
Yeah.
Megan, do you have any first? You want to go first, or
no? I'll let you go. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lisa, I have the inside scoop because we are in the same process group too. So I have a question. I'm so curious. What's been the biggest change you've seen in your marriage? Can I ask that question?
Ah, yeah, I mean, it is that, you know, just the mutual trust, the vulnerability, it's not being afraid to say what I need, and vice versa. I was always afraid of that before, because if you expressed your needs, you were weak, and it wouldn't be met with kindness. So that's just what, I entered into the marriage with. And so, just in learning everything we learned, I would just apply those things, and slowly conversations got more vulnerable and more, and actually more healthy. And the respect, that adulthood respect level went up. And yeah, it's just it's an incredible thing. We have a much stronger, I feel much stronger in the marriage now than I ever have.
Does he communicate like a felt difference or a seen difference in you and in you all?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like we can come to each other now and say,
Yeah,
in a calm way,
yeah,
that maybe wasn't there before.
awesome.
Mm. So there were a couple of things I wanted to, if you don't mind sharing. What were some of the big aha moments for you when you said, you've learned to heal, to ask, to provide? Was there a particular aha moment in this, 19-month journey where you're like, okay.
Yeah. It actually started before that, because I attended UL, Ultimate Leader. And that was the first time I heard that the neural pathways in your brain could heal.
Mm.
That blew my mind, literally. And so that was one step toward entering the Townsend Institute, because I'm like, I saw that things could be better, and that I could do this and learn more, grow, develop, and then help other people, because I've always wanted to help other people, make a difference. So I knew that I needed to do this. And yeah, that I remember that aha moment sitting in that room where Dr. Cloud was explaining how
Oh.
we could heal those circuits that are going around. He's like, you can rebuild that. And I'm like, what? I never been able to do that. So yeah, that was the biggest thing where I actually saw hope for myself. That's where hope entered in. That, like I said, that brokenness that I thought I was just damaged goods, that actually provided hope for me.
Wow. I'm sorry, Kieran, please jump in whenever. But if you'll go back to your slide that shows the fruits, there's a picture of you on there. And I was looking at that picture of you and looking at you now, and like you're just glowing now. And so it's, you're talking about all this healing, and I'm like, it's truly evident, that it's, healing from the inside out, because you look just like a different person.
That was that first day at the kickoff or whatever. In California. So I look at that picture a lot, and I thought I was doing pretty good. You know, I was like, yeah, no, I look hopeful. I don't know.
Oh, it just is. There's like a brighter light in
Yeah.
you now. I mean, I think you had a light in you then, because people were always drawn to you, but there's just a bright light in you now.
Yeah.
And then I want to reaffirm your coaching presence, just your presence, period.
Thank you.
It's amazing. People just, you just want to sit down with you and talk.
Thank you. I guess one thing I probably should have put in there is, that presence was learned. It actually was a hiding style first. Should have included that. I've included it in other talks that I've given, devotions. I don't know why I kept it out. That's probably a thing, but I learned with my family, with my dad especially, we had to walk on eggshells. And
Mm.
so that transference that they talk about, so I needed to be that level person in the room. And so I learned how to read the room
Yeah.
because it was dangerous.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I learned how to control the room.
Yeah.
And I actually learned how to kept doing it with my daughter who has autism. And so I would be the level person to try to regulate her because she was
Mhm.
dysregulated all the time.
Mm.
So it probably came from a necessity that I had to learn,
Mm.
but it was something I carried,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
and I no longer just carry it. I use it to bless others.
What a
So,
testimony
Mhm.
to,
Yeah.
the treasures in the darkness in our life, right? Like
yeah,
it's something
Mm.
that God has made such
Yeah.
good use
Yeah.
of a gift. Yeah.
yeah. So it used to be a heavy thing, and it's not a heavy thing anymore. It's a really light thing. So
I love it.
Um,
Yeah, go. Yeah.
if you, like if somebody came up to you and asked you, I don't even know if the question is like asked you about this program or, like, and said to you, something's changing you, like, how would you, like, what would you tell them, like in like a sentence or two, like what's the nugget you tell them, like, and that you want to gift them with? Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I think it is that through this program, I've learned how to heal when I never thought it was possible. And, I've learned where the struggles in my relationships, the root causes of that I
Mhm.
didn't understand before. I'm trying to think of what I have told people because they ask all the time, like, what is this
Yeah.
about? I'm like, you just learn where the things that you thought were serving you in the past are actually getting in the way of your relationships, and you learn how to turn that around
Yeah.
Mm.
then to help others. So
And when you came in to the program, were you hopeful, like eager, looking for something kind of desperate, or were you like skeptical, and like hesitant, or like what would you say you were when you started?
oof. Uh-huh. I'm overwhelmed, I guess. Like
Mhm.
I was just being obedient, and I've done this a lot of times in my life. I'm just follow God, and
Mhm.
actually there's been times when I've argued with him and said, I don't think that's what I need to do. And he said, no, this is it. I'm like, are you sure? And so I just go and do because I know that he's telling me to do this, and it's like this blind obedience,
Mhm.
and yet trusting that he's gonna see me through. And that was like one of the things that that got me to say yes to this is, I prayed and prayed and prayed, and I listened, which is new for me. And he said, I will provide all that you need. And he
Mhm.
said it in so many different ways through so many different people and avenues that I'm like, okay, I'm going to hold you to that because I'm not going to be able to do this by myself.
Mhm.
and he's provided
Mm.
every step of the way.
Okay, Mike, I have one more question, then I'll turn it over to you. Sorry. One more
You're
kind of question. When you came in, did you like, and you had an inside scoop a little bit, obviously, from Michelle or whatever, but were you coming in thinking really about like skilling up on coaching and consulting as like a tool set to implement, or were you thinking like, this is going to change me, and that's the meat of it?
That's a great question. I think it was both. I knew that I was going to be changed because I had the previous ultimate leader,
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right.
insight. And so I'm like, man, that started a journey, but so I knew I was gonna be dramatically changed.
Yeah. That's
And
great.
I knew that I was gonna be able to help other people because of that.
Yeah.
It was very clear.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay. Sorry, Micah.
Awesome. No, I don't know if I have any other questions. This was just amazing.
Yeah. I love your logo. It's beautiful.
Me too.
I was thinking for your equestrian one, you need like a little horse, like coming through
Yeah,
coming through.
I know.
I loved that though. And yeah, it was just really, you did a great job, Lisa. It was just and the same thing Micah said, like, I feel like, I mean, Lisa, as part of my process group, like, I look back and I'm like, oh, I could get teary. I'm like, but our process group has really served. I mean, our cohort has, but our process group has really served as like an anchor throughout all
Yeah.
this. So it's really special.
Yeah, I could not have.
No,
Nope.
either.
Nope.
I wouldn't want to in either. So
No.
it's really special. But yeah, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great job. Great job.
Okay. Micah, do you want to go second or third?
I'll go last.
Last? Okay. Then that means it's me, right?
Do you
All
want
right.
to check the time and that way you'll
Yep,
know?
let me I'm gonna raise up because I gotta stand while I talk, I gotta move.
I know.
You were standing,
I-
weren't you, Lisa?
I was standing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, will you unshare so I can share?
Oh, yep.
Por favor.
Let me figure out how to do that. Hold on.
I know.
Stop share. There you go.
Okay, and then let me get my screen ready too. You down here. Okay. Sorry, just gonna take me 1 second. Right. Back to share screen. Okay. Can you guys see that? Is it big enough? Do I need to make it bigger?
That's good.
It's big enough?
I think, can you make it a little bigger?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
we're
I can
good.
make it this big. I just don't know how it shows up for you guys. Oh, that's good.
That's good.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, great. I wasn't sure.
I know.
Okay. So lots of clicks here. So I got to figure out my clicks. Let's see. Get set up. Okay. You guys ready? Okay. I think many times, throughout scripture, trees are used, and we've all kind of had these trees in our lives anyway through Townsend model, but trees are used to symbolize life and health and growth. They send out their roots, to gather sustenance and really more deeply root and establish themselves. They bear fruit in season and have leaves that don't wither. And Ephesians 3:16-19 really speaks of being strengthened in our inner being and rooted and grounded in and comprehending the love of Christ so that we might fully live. And I really couldn't think of a better way to describe or depict what this program has meant to me. So I want to start by sharing a little bit about each of the character structures. And I used acorns to depict the starting point because, to be honest, the concepts at first were a bit tough to crack in terms of understanding and awareness. And in order to receive true nourishment and healing in each, it really kind of required that I look within to where things were seated as well. So first, looking at attachment. At the start of our program, it was my second strongest character structure behind adulthood. I scored, I think, a 62 out of 100, putting me in that T-prep strengthening level of this capacity. But to be honest, I kind of was initially more concerned about my two lower scoring capacities, separation and integration. I thought I was okay in the area of attachment. I was able to say yes to relationships and move towards others, but I kind of quickly realized that healthy attachment is characterized more meaningfully as like the ability to say yes to a shared depth within the relationship where two people vulnerably expose their innermost selves to one another. So according to this understanding, I began to see that my relationships were imbalanced, with me willingly tending to the emotions and needs of others, but not necessarily wagering to get mine met. I believe attachment was malnourished for me probably early in life. My mom, who is the oldest of 4 children, was a daughter of alcoholic parents and learned to really favor emotional practicality and neutrality because it kind of allowed her to maximize stability in her home and life. But later, when she was a mother herself to my sister and I, Melanie, she provided for us every physical need, but was kind of more phlegmatic with matters of the heart. I mean, she was by no means cruel in dealing with our hearts or emotional needs, but just kind of incapable of meeting them. So I began coping with this unintentional dismissal and denial of my needs by turning to counterfeits, such as food for comfort, activity for distraction, and as I've already mentioned, kind of those one-sided rescuing relationships for validation. And of course, they did not satiate my need for bonding, but they really left me lonely and underdeveloped. So next, I chose leaves to represent growth within each character structure. So continuing on with attachment, what I've really now come to understand is that attachment is our most profound and relational need. It's not optional, nor is it a luxury. And there were several things that really propelled the growth for me in this area. And the first was I used a feelings wheel, and I kind of challenged myself daily to identify my emotions. I'd always been really good at narrating them after the fact, but not at feeling them or expressing them in the moment. So by naming them more readily, I really became more connected to my heart and more comfortable sharing it with others. Next, I worked to connect my feelings to the needs using the relational nutrient chart as a reference and guide. And doing so helped me specifically ask for what I needed from others and kind of then thereby like taking ownership for getting my needs met. And then lastly, I really had to do some work to reposition people in my life. People previously had been lumped into one circle or category, but after reading People Fuel and understanding the 7 categories of people in our lives, from coaches to contaminants, I was better able to discern which people comprised each, and specifically which people were kind of in my innermost comrade circle where reciprocal relationships could occur. And those, of course, are the people who became my life team. Whoops, sorry, clicked my Outlook. Hopefully it doesn't pop up for you guys. Okay. So the Exeter program, I've really seen the largest growth in my attachment capacity, oh yes, sorry. There goes my Outlook. Y'all can't see it, right? Sorry. Okay. So I've seen the most growth in my attachment. It's now my strongest. And I think the foundational nature of attachment really has provided crucial strength and foundation for my growth in the other character structures, and specifically in separation and integration. So the fruit of my learning on attachment is now that I can bond to others within loving relationships where we can both hold out needs and hurts for tending. And I think this quote from Timothy Keller sums it up really nicely. To be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. And this is kind of how I previously lived. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear, which is kind of probably why I chose to live less attached. It's scary. But to be fully known and fully loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God. And this is how I'm really learning to live now. So now on to separation. At the start of our program, separation scored fairly low with just 57 out of 100. Even as low as it wasn't my lowest. It was my second to lowest. And to be honest, though, I didn't need the assessment to tell me how big of an area of the deficit this was for me. I had a habit of taking on the responsibilities and problems of others as if they were my own, always hoping that somehow my needs might magically be noticed and tended to as well. It left me feeling exhausted, bitter, isolated, invisible, lost. And I realize now that my fear of rejection and abandonment were really what were driving me. And I think the origin of that, sadly and ironically, was birthed on the day I was born. My older sister, Melanie, developed a limp for attention the day that I was brought home from the hospital. She resented sharing and competing for the affection of our parents. So her disdain for me perpetuated throughout our lives, really kind of as like falsely tattling on me or blaming, rejecting my advances in sisterhood and friendship, mocking me with sarcasm, or just really blatantly ignoring me. I really longed to be accepted and wanted by her, but she did not reciprocate, which led me to work harder and harder in an attempt to make her happy and really try to cause her to love me. While I am happy to report that Mel and I now have a very safe, close, and loving relationship, there were lingering effects kind of showing up in other relationships. I tended to create codependent relationships where I served as a caretaker because I falsely believed the dependency upon me was a guarantee of relationship, keeping my fears of being abandoned, unloved, or alone at bay. But, expecting or demanding commitment does not equate to a love freely given, but really mere compliance. As I've grown in awareness and healed some of my separation woundedness, I've really begun operating from a place of being loved rather than attempting to earn it. And the greatest impact has been realized in my marriage and at work. For some time, I had been over-fragilizing my husband, Chad, as he wrestled with depression. I over-owned his emotions and therefore really overcompensated for them in our family dynamics as well. I believed it was my responsibility to insulate him from hard things and insulate my kids from his dark and stormy moments. In the process, I lost my own identity and voice. I enabled him to remain in an unhealthy place and even changed the nature of our relationship, in that he was kind of someone I cared for rather than someone I was intimate with. At work, my job requires that I'm daily in the well with people. However, I was over-owning their burdens as well. Townsend talks about that knapsack. It's an individual affair only for the carrier, and each person is supposed to carry their own. We can't carry it for others, and I certainly was guilty of doing so, and others were guilty of asking or wanting me to do so for them as well, to be honest. As I exit our program, I've seen significant growth in my separation capacity. It's still my next to lowest character structure, but there is a much felt difference in my awareness and health in this area. I was able to tell Chad that I could not continue living the next 20 years of our marriage as we had lived the first, and that I really needed him to be talking and relying on other people, not just me, including friends and a counselor. And he not only received therapy, but he also got on a medication that was pretty much next to miraculous. And he has since asked for forgiveness from our children for his difficult nature and apologized to me for, sorry, for not making space for me in the relationship. I also apologize to him for enabling him, and we are well into rebuilding a really sweet and deep intimacy. And our family will forever be changed for the better because I was able to take a step forward in creating boundaries in my marriage. At work, I can now leave others' knapsacks with them and be responsible simply for carrying my own. And now I really only step in when someone is rendered helpless by what kind of Townsend calls that boulder, a deep catastrophic loss. And the irony is that that's really enlarged my capacity. And therefore, I'm able to serve on a broader scale. And having recognized that change in me, my CEO came to me and said, I really think you're ready to lead at the next level. And so he made me the chief people officer just this year. So I'm really excited to expand my influence in that way. Okay. So differentiation, of this kind, it requires being vulnerable and brave in the face of fear of my abandonment, fear of abandonment and isolation. And I think it really means I must do kind of what these quotes say. These are ones that are treasures for me that I found along the way. I must hold fast to important boundaries, giving, my no's as freely as my yeses, not over worrying about others, and, not sacrificing myself on the altar of caring for others either. Okay, integration. At the start of our program, integration was my lowest scoring and weakest character structure, with just a 47 out of 100. And it was my only character capacity registering that lower TPRAT growing level. But for me, wrestling with integration was most challenging kind of when facing my own imperfections. Perfectionism has long since been my taskmaster, always telling me to strive for better and hide the parts of myself that did not measure up. I found it really difficult to accept myself as sinful, limited, unfinished, but yet also created in God's image. I spent a lot of energy attempting to leverage what I perceived as the good in me and bury what I perceived as the bad in me. In my growing up years, I directly and indirectly received negative messages about my personality and my physical appearance, and positive messages kind of about specific behaviors and my performance. Some of the early negative messages were delivered by my mom unintentionally. She talked about her struggle with weight, and I was told her I was her mini-me, and the result was that I was also viewing my physique as problematic. Mom vocalized her distaste for my dad's busyness. I was told I was wired just like him, and thus I really believed that my engagement in a full schedule of activities was wrong. Conversely, though, I was praised for hard work, good grades, and a strong showing and lots of activities, so I internalized that the goal was never to accept anything less than the best. Neither the messages nor those that inadvertently delivered them were really the problem. In reality, I think the issue was that I experienced their content in isolation. And so the perceptions became my new truths. Had I revealed my interpretations and their impact on me to my parents, I really feel confident they would have provided me with the grace and acceptance that I needed to resolve the good-bad split. But instead, I unknowingly began hiding. I know I employed willpower and self-denial and hard work, all hoping to eliminate those shameful parts. And the standards I held for myself were unrealistic and really at times torturous. I just had such a hard time accepting my limitations and receiving grace. But as I've grown in integration, I have learned that the only antidote to perfectionism and splitting is healthily attaching to others and God in order to receive forgiveness, acceptance, and that safety net of grace from others. So one of the major ways my integration deficit became apparent to me at the beginning of our program was via assignments and grades. I noticed I constantly was waiting for a grade to be returned as if it were a means to validate that I was good enough. And then later, as a part of our coursework, we did that 360 review. And I was nervous to read through all the feedback for fear it wouldn't be all positive. But what's interesting is that I realized I also wasn't the only victim of my harsh inner judge. I also noticed that I had a tendency to project it onto others by superimposing my high standards onto them. I struggled to respect and extend grace to people that I viewed as lazy or people I felt that were approaching their imperfections and weaknesses with kind of a lackadaisical attitude. I was often really impatient and unknowingly demanding and direct with them rather than offering them the same safety net of grace that I needed as well. So fortunately, my integration capacity has seen a lot of growth in the last 18 months, jumping up by 20 points and moving into a new level, the strengthening level. It's still my weakest character structure, so I kind of refer to myself as a reforming perfectionist. Early on, I turned off the Canvas grade notifications so that I could focus more on learning rather than performing. And when it came time to review my 360 results, I did it with 2 of my life team members so that I could process interpretations on the spot. Rather than risking that, like in isolation, I would overemphasize and internalize that harder feedback in an inappropriate way. I guess as I've let go of demanding ideals and accepted a more balanced reality, and even grieved the loss of ever being perfect, achieving perfection or being perfect, I've stopped hiding my bad parts and really stopped striving to be good enough. And as I've experienced more acceptance and grace myself, I've also been able to extend it to others. The fruit of being more healthily integrated is that I've really been able to view my sinful and fallen nature both as inevitable and yet still covered by grace. And by confessing the parts of myself that feel unforgivable, broken, unlovable, unwanted, too much, not enough to God and others, I've really been granted acceptance and forgiveness and grace. And the result is that my 2 selves, the good and the bad, have merged together into one marred and yet really loved whole. I don't have to live and buried in secret shame, terrified and alone. I don't have to strive for perfection, but can really rest instead in forgiveness. And in the end, just as Dr. Townsend says, it's more important to be loved than to be good. So last is adulthood. And at the start of our program, adulthood was my strongest scoring capacity. And this really resonated as true as I felt I was really clear on my passions and talents and mission, all that really goes into building, one's capacity to meet the demands of reality. Of course, there have been moments like walking into a board meeting for the first time when I did not always feel like a confident equal or was maybe not living self-improved internally. And those were just clues for me that I might need to continue working to internalize God's approval of myself and grow in confidence to maintain a healthy adult stance. But overall, I really do feel like I can relate well as a mutual, respectful, comfortable, and equal person to any level of authority. So instead of sharing about the origin of a deficit in adulthood or my hiding style or even my growth in this capacity, I want to share a little bit about why I feel this capacity was healthier in me. I grew up in a household where discussion was lively around the dinner table and everyone was expected to have a voice or at least was provided the opportunity. Often my dad, pictured here on my wedding day, would ask me for my thoughts or opinions on something. And as a successful business executive, he didn't need my input, but he was intentionally sowing seeds of confidence and teaching me, as 1 Timothy 4:12 says, to not let anyone look down on you because you're young, but to set an example. My dad was the father of 2 daughters. He was very intentional in teaching us how to be independent. We learned to change tires and brake pads, how to budget and invest. And he really just longed for us to know that we had what it took to operate in the world as equals, regardless of our gender or age. My growth in adulthood continued a decade ago when I first started working at my current organization. This is my boss and CEO, Bob Bean. You know, he saw potential in me to become a great leader. However, he also noticed that I really seemed to lack some confidence and surety in my giftedness and skills. So I'm very fortunate that he paired me with an executive coach, Jeff Wilson. This is who Jeff is right here. And over the course of a year, Jeff really aided me in gaining clarity and confidence, helping me to kind of healthily internalize the good that God and others said about me until I could stand more self-assured and approved. Whoops. Okay. My adulthood capacity, it's all minimal growth throughout the program, just +2. But this really isn't surprising because it was fairly strong to begin with. And the other capacities obviously needed a bit of attention. So as I leave Townsend, this list kind of represents the practices that I've already put in place, as well as some additional ones that I'm committing to in an effort to become more rooted and established in each character capacity. I won't go through each, but I do want to highlight the last 2 that apply to all of the capacities. You know, first, I really think that employing a coach or other support team member is an intentional way to invest in my growth and ensure that I'm a healthy helper for others. And additionally, I really want to look at opportunities to reteach what I've learned. I think primarily because it's been so life-changing for me, and I want to give that gift to others. But also the process of reteaching really does further solidify my own learning. Okay, so transitioning a little bit to my growth within the coaching and consulting competencies. You know, growing my competencies throughout the program was a lot like the process of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. You know, once inside the self-made chrysalis, the caterpillar releases enzymes and dissolves all of its tissues into a liquid form. So once it's fully disintegrated, it begins to transform itself so that eventually it emerges completely different as a butterfly. And similarly, most, if not all of the ideas, assumptions, and actual processes and structures of coaching and consulting that I came into the program with have disintegrated, but in all of the best ways. You know, I feel as though I'm emerging with an entirely new design. Beforehand, I would have told you that coaching differentiated from counseling and that coaches gave instruction and wisdom. In reality, though, what I thought of as coaching was much more closely related to the modality of mentorship. What I learned was that coaching was really more about listening and attuning, staying in quadrant 1 most often and longer than you'd normally expect, asking powerful questions for context, not content, and really ensuring that everything is client-led. And then next, in terms of coaching, I also gained a framework where I really had none previously. You know, my new coaching framework includes the TI coaching framework of engage, explore, and evoke. You know, the ICF 8 core competencies, the Townsend growth model. But I also gained an understanding and all the necessary tools for managing a coaching engagement start to finish. I didn't have anything like that previously, understanding or resources. And so in the program, I gained the front end administrative and relational work of an intake survey for clients, working with sponsors, and contracting. Of course, I was also provided with a structure for the actual coaching session itself. You know, from everything from greeting them, gaining agreement, and partnering for follow-up and next steps. In terms of consulting, you know, I really gained an engagement structure here too, including like a needs assessment day and contracting. I also gained confidence that I do have expertise to offer, drawing off my own experience in HR, organizational culture, executive leadership, and more. You know, I've really learned so much, and I'm still in the learning process. At times, I feel kind of discouraged to realize just how novice I am. But in the famous words of Winnie the Pooh, what's wrong with knowing what you know now and not knowing what you don't know now until later? Amen, Pooh. Like, that's such sage advice on healthy integration for this recovering perfectionist. So what I've really come to appreciate from my time at the Townsend Institute is that the 3rd C of their model, which stands for connection, of course, is really the secret sauce. It starts and ends with connection. And this is what's going to undergird any future success I will have, growing in both of my character and my competencies. So this list represents some of the many ways that I intend to continue becoming more rooted and established as a more confident and competent coach and consultant and leader. And, you know, you'll notice it's mostly about being connected, coaching others, networking, marketing, serving to gain experience, remaining a part of my process group if they'll have me, obtaining a mentor coach. And, you know, I just realized I need others to walk this path of growth. You know, the culmination of this program is not just how I have grown and changed internally and externally, but now how I also intentionally leverage that growth and change to live a life worthy of my calling. And I think living via a personal mission statement ensures that my life is not just unfolding as it may, but instead is being really directed by my intentional choices, and thus so is the legacy I'm creating. So the mission statement that I'm now attempting to live by is that I will live each day leveraging all of who God created me to be and all of what he has entrusted to me to invite people, nurture people, and partner with people in their journey towards wholeness, most especially in Christ. And this starts with a commitment to commune with God each morning and abide with him throughout the day to ensure that I'm filled with his spirit and centered on his will moment by moment. It means looking for and being open to opportunities to minister to others as I'm going. And, it often requires sacrifices of expectations, time, or energy just to be present with others, noticing and inquiring, listening, and offering something meaningful. And the resulting legacy, is not, it's best summed up, not in adjectives, but in the names of the people I've had the privilege of serving as a leader: Jordan, Betsy, Christine, Brittany, and most importantly, of course, my children, Emily and Case. And, as these individuals, all of them, continue to live their lives, my legacy ripples forward through the fabric of time, hopefully leaving an ongoing, indelible, and eternal mark on God's world for his glory. One of my previous disciples and direct reports, Emily, shared that when you've been loved by Karen, you might not be able to figure out how or exactly what she did, but you've been changed for the better, and you want to pass that love on to others. Maya Angelou also said that I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And this is really how I hope to be remembered, not by my name or title, but because I made others feel seen, known, and loved. Currently I have the privilege of living this out in my work at Transnetics, serving in my church and community, and with my children. In the future, I really do hope to be able to impact more people via coaching and consulting as well. For now, I will continue to live my life in Christ, rooted, built up, strengthened in accordance with all of the teaching I've received, overflowing with gratitude to the Townsend Institute. Both the program, all of its leaders and my professors, my process group, our cohort, my family, friends, and colleagues, everybody who's really supported me throughout this last year and a half, and of course, most of all, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Well done.
Thank you.
That was unsurprisingly very comprehensive, Karen.
You know me.
I do. Oh man. You do. You just blow people's minds with everything that is inside that mind of yours. It is. Yeah.
Too much sometimes, I'm sure. Too much.
No, it's good. It was every time I had a question, you answered it. I was like,
good.
what about this? Oh, there she goes.
I know it was a little long because I kept trying to squeeze it in, but
Fine. Well, I do have you said at the very beginning that you were repositioning people in your life. I guess, kind of a two-part question. How did you do that? Did they know? And what do the friendships look like now? Or I'm assuming you were friends.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story of a friend. We'll call her Erin. She was probably somebody that I considered in my, I just lumped everybody in. I love everybody. And so I just hold them close. But I kind of started to realize I felt some kind of way towards her, maybe some resentment because I was always the one pursuing. And so then I would hear oh, she went to breakfast with somebody or else in our friend group. And I just always thought, is there something wrong with me? And so I just felt this, I did try to have dinner with her and I kind of felt vulnerability hangover because I was didn't feel safe, I think, and so what happened, so she's a perfect example. What I realized was, okay, she's not here, but she's here. She's just a concentric circle out from there. She's dear to me. She loves me. I know she does. Her gift is not pursuit and intentionality. And so what I gave myself the freedom to do in that learning process, though, was she said to me one day, she said a year ago, she said, I miss you. I said, oh, I miss you too. Now, what I would have done in the past was, oh, we should get together. I would have taken the next step. I just said, oh, I miss you too. Left it. A little bit while later, I saw her at church. She came and hugged me. She's like, I really miss you. We should get together. And normally I'd say, okay, when? What do you want to go? Didn't do that. I just said, I'd love to. And I didn't do anything. I left it. And then she texted me and said, hey, could we go to breakfast? And so And there was just something about realizing that like freeing her up from the expectations I had, repositioning her, that like actually I could really share freely with her. I could respond to her. I could invite her. Like it just changed like it lifted this. And then I focused on the reciprocal relationships that I had this depth in. And like that's where I pour my energy. And so if my other Erin, because my sister-in-law, who's my best friend, like she would ask me every time the same day the other Erin would, like, this Erin gets priority, And so just,
Yeah.
do I think that they noticed? They might have noticed that I'm not pursuing as much because I'm kind of known for that, but it wasn't a conversation that I had to have. I just kind of shifted that a little bit, and it's just made all the difference in my heart.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the 7C. Is it the 7Cs he talks
Yeah.
about? The comrades, okay.
Laminates. Yeah.
That just gave me such clarity too. Yeah. Like,
Freedom. Yeah.
put these people where they belong, like
We try
and
to
that's
put them all in
okay.
that comrade, and
Right.
I'm like, no, you don't.
Bring them all in.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I guess I think I only have like one question is like, what most surprised you
Mm.
about this whole thing?
Well, so I think it kind of goes back to the question I asked you, Lisa. Is probably why I asked it, because I've been thinking about it myself. But like what I came in with was like, I knew that God wanted me to do this program. I knew that, but I kind of thought it was because eventually I would need a second career. And that people said I was gifted at this, so I should, I thought, oh, well, this would be a good second career then. And I kind of want a framework or a better understanding, and maybe I want to pursue learning. And so I think I didn't come in knowing all of the growth that would happen for me. And to be honest, if I never become a coach or a consultant, I don't care anymore. Like I'm changed. And as a result, so much of my life has changed. And I think that was so surprising to me. I didn't expect the character capacity work. I didn't know that was really a part of it. I had no reference. And so I think, and the biggest shift I think has been with Chad, my husband, and I, mostly just because it was all happening at the same time, his recognition of depression and all that journey. And my kids' lives were forever changed because of, I could take a step towards him, he could take a step towards that, it just kind of all changed. So I think I just was most surprised by that. I had no idea what I was getting into. But I'm so grateful. I mean, I wish I could just tell everybody about it every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I actually wrote down your question that you asked Lisa, because I'm like, I think it'd be good for all of us to share that, because it's, we all walk away with something different. So I think it's great.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any other questions, because it was such a great presentation.
Well, thanks, y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, so mine, I know you're gonna like get everything kind of prepped for this. I realize y'all don't know my story. So mine's kind of like a narrative story.
Great.
About all of this. So you're gonna have to bear with me because I have it all written down. Great. So you're gonna see me kind of reading what I put.
So excited, Mike.
Oh boy, brace yourself.
Buckle up.
It's all right.
Here we go.
And I'll mute myself now, I guess, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I would love it if y'all want to like interact.
Okay. Okay.
Scene. Like, I think that would probably make me less like emotional.
Okay.
So
we're here for you.
We are here
Yeah.
for you.
Okay. So
you got this.
Here is my capstone presentation. So I'm going through, like I said, you don't know my history. And so I wanted to kind of build the foundation of the history of my attachment, separation, integration, and adulthood, and then how I've grown through the Townsend Institute in each of those. Much like what I've heard from both of you, it's really interesting how, one little fracture or something in attachment, can impact separation, integration, adulthood. I mean, it's all woven together so strongly. So then again, I'll talk about the growth through Townsend, and then some of the growth of the competencies, outside of learning, coaching, and consulting skills. I'm going to kind of dive deep into the quadrants and some of the competencies that I've really felt like I've grown most in. And then what I'm thinking about doing moving forward, and then my personal legacy statement. So, all right, so this is me. So, when you look at this baby, you see a life of potential. Any parent knows that. And I'm sure my parents envisioned a life of adventure and excitement. No one ever envisioned a life of struggles and trials and frustrations, of pain, of hurt, of fear. Parents just don't want that for their children. But for me, it's taken me 47, almost 48 years to have a life full of healing and growth and a closer relationship with God, like a true understanding of who God really is. So how can a little baby like this go from one end of the spectrum to the other? And it just started with the small things that happened in life. And then the small things can start to impact bits and pieces of the character structure, which is, how the enemy just wants to come in and kind of like speak into those.
Yeah.
So attachment is the first one. And Dr. Townsend said the ability to have deep, healthy, meaningful relationships with God and with people. For me, like I mentioned earlier, the small things started from a very young age. You can see here, my sister and I were always together. We're 16 months apart. So she and I had a really great, healthy attachment. I was there with my mom, my grandmother. My Mimi was everything to me. I was always with my Mimi. So my attachment was very strong there. And then, of course, there's, I was a blondie. And so shortly after this picture was taken, the picture of me with chocolate on my face, that's when the impact to the character structure really took place. So what no one knew at the time was that I was legally deaf. So I was labeled stubborn. I was labeled strong-willed, when in fact I couldn't. I'm sorry, touching. When I couldn't hear. This is a lot more difficult than what I thought.
That's okay.
I would be disciplined and spanked, not knowing why. I would be sitting there playing with toys, and having a great time. And then all of a sudden, I'm just spanked because I wasn't listening. So, that created a whole bunch of fear in me. The world became a very scary place, and I couldn't trust adults at that point. Give me a minute.
So hard.
So you can begin to see the impact that this started having on this small little girl through some of the pictures that you're going to see here. So like you can tell that the fear was starting to build up, and the loneliness was starting to develop in a small child. You can see in this picture, my sister is paying attention to the camera, listening to the directions, and I'm just lost. And then I think this last picture here was the one that was really telling for me, because it shows like the fear that such a small child felt. But then, because my attachment was broken, my separation was real good. This is kind of my revenge tour, is where that's where this begins. So once I knew I couldn't trust the adults, I was ready to conquer the world alone. I became more independent and very self-reliant. Even though my hearing had started to return shortly after this through medical advancements, I was already well aware of boundaries and, held strong to those. My mom always kind of joked, and she would say, I never worried about I never worried about you out of all the kids, because you were going to make up your own mind. Well, what she didn't realize was that, it was because that attachment had fractured, and then this separation was starting to grow to where I'm like, you do your thing, I'll do mine. So through integration, although separation was strong, the integration was suffering, because I was still seeking that validation in various ways. And I needed the approval, however possible. I would be devastated if I was criticized, and I felt like I was always overlooked. So there must be something wrong with me. This carried over into my adult life and into my careers. I often, thought of, I'm damaged, I'm not good enough, I'm overlooked. And yes, I had to put a glamour shot in there.
You did. I love it.
Uh-huh.
I think I have the same one.
I mean, who wouldn't want a glamour shot in their presentation?
I love it.
So onto adulthood. Although in each of these pictures, I'm smiling and it looks like I'm having a good time. I think deep down the hurt was so deep that I didn't even know at that point. So I didn't feel like I was heard. I didn't feel like I was seen. And I did not view myself as an equal to others. So since my character structure was damaged, I sought to heal all of this through bad relationships. And that's where I was really seeking my validation. This led to like different kinds of abuse. It led to a sexual assault and a long line of heartbreaking situations. I would like to say Jesus and therapy are the two things that really got me back on track. And then little did I know that the Townsend Institute would just come in and continue to heal. So what I was seeking through people to validate me, I'm sorry, I was seeking through people to heal what was hurt and what was broken. And little did I know that, again, after Jesus and therapy, that God, through people, would also heal the broken places as well. So what I once heard as damage I started believing I was being healed, not good enough. I started believing that I was created, I am who God created me to be. And then once I believed I was overlooked, now I believe I am seen. So the funny story, I do have to add this in here because the Townsend Institute, how this came into my life, truly by chance. So I'm currently working in the job at the hospital as the director of HR. And in order to move up, they have some kind of rule in place that you have to be in order to be a VP, you have to have your master's degree. So I was looking at other schools and thinking of joining or going for my master's in human resources. But if there's one thing we know, human resources isn't known for being inventive or changing. It's kind of going to stay the same. It didn't really interest me too much. So I kept trying to put it off. I was mindlessly scrolling on Instagram one day and I saw an ad on Instagram for the Townsend Institute. So down below the picture, it said, find out more now. You can click that little thing. And so I clicked the link and I'm like, well, I've been praying this whole time. I'm like, I don't know what to do, Lord, I'm going to, click this link and find out, because I knew who John Townsend was. Dr. Henry Cloud had come to our church several times, and I just have been big fans of their teachings. So I clicked on the link, filled out my information, and long story short, 6 weeks later, I was at the Townsend Institute at the kickoff conference. It was really that fast. So at the kickoff conference, that is where the beginning of me coming face to face with the damaged areas of my character structure really happened. As much as I didn't want to, because I'm strong in separation, they intentionally put you in these situations where you're going to have to stand there and really confront some of the broken pieces in your heart, but you're doing it in such a safe environment that it's okay. So jumping into the process groups and holding the messiness of my heart out there, hoping not to be rejected, was the first step of healing. During that time, they were challenging us to develop our life group, which I did shortly after the kickoff conference. I started to learn that not everyone who was an adult or everyone who was in my life was someone I didn't need to be attached to. And I started developing those. I learned to truly lean on those around me and discover that even though attachment may have been broken in childhood, it can always be healed as an adult. So for separation, I'm still strong here. I like to do my thing. I love and respect when other people, they have their boundaries as well. But I'm learning that when someone needs help, that I can be there as well. I can be in the well with them. In the past where, if someone was having an issue, I would kind of force myself to help them. And now I'm more open to allowing them to ask for help and being willing to meet them where they are. So with integration, it really challenged me here. The more I learned in each class, the more I understood that, I'm a whole and not just the product of one bad situation or one bad piece of feedback or anything like that. I'm able to really kind of balance everything. And that's really shown up in my work life now, where I've been able to kind of pass things on, or I wouldn't say pass them on, but disconnect my emotional response from the outcome of a situation. And then adulthood. This is where things really changed for me. I began to understand that my voice is valuable, that I am seen, that I am loved, and that I'm just as important as anyone else.
Mm.
Oh, there's more to come. I probably jumped the gun a little bit on that. So again, outside of all the coaching and consulting skills, I really took a look at some of the specifics of the competencies that I have. And so the first one is the attuning. Attending the Townsend Institute certainly made me realize that the majority of time people just want that, or they have that desire to be heard. This has given me the skill set to understand that I don't have to listen to respond. I can just listen to be there with someone. Validation. Outside of attuning, a lot of people need reassurances that what they're doing in their life and the choices that they're making, out as long as it's not like illegal or dangerous, that they can be supported in those choices. Relating. This has always been a really strong strength of mine. According to Strength Finders, it's my second. Woo is my first. Relator is my second. But now I find myself relating to people in a different manner. I have a better ability to empathize with their hurts, their pain, and their fear of moving forward with, in taking an action step. Again, it goes back to what Townsend was talking about when he was saying being in the well with someone. I feel like that has really strengthened in me after attending the Institute. Strategizing is probably where I saw the most growth. So throughout the time at the Institute, I was placed on a big project. I don't know if I had classes with you all last year when I was going through this massive project. And it was, I look back on it and it's really interesting how God kind of lined up, okay, you're going to start this job. You're going to go to the Townsend Institute. Then I'm going to really challenge you to get into the nitty gritty of the places you want to hide. Oh, and also really make you kind of stand up and confront some of the things. And, it was just like, you can't hide from him. So I feel like God had lined up my growth through the Townsend Institute with this project. And so I had to truly step in and wrestle with integration and adulthood as I presented to some of the decision makers of the organization. I walked into the room, I viewed myself as a peer, that my voice needed to be heard. I'm not saying that I felt 100% confident, because there's still those times where you still struggle with those pieces. But I kind of left it there and said, what I had presented was the right information. It's what they needed to hear. They may not have wanted to hear it, but it's what they needed to hear. So looking back, I spent a lot of time, looking through some of our old classes, and it seems to me like, do you remember the intentional change theory? Do y'all remember us talking about that?
Yeah.
Well, it's where you're asking a lot of those questions to really kind of make them rock the boat, or kind of make them feel like the boat's rocking a little bit. And I feel like the Townsend Institute, it's one big intentional change theory. For me at least.
Yeah.
So each class challenged the way I viewed myself, challenged the way I had viewed relationships. Each class, even though we were learning a lot about coaching and consulting, I felt that it revealed more about me. It allowed me to let God heal not all the broken pieces, but let God heal the broken pieces. I feel like I've become a better leader, a better sister, a better friend, daughter, and overall just a better balanced person, because I'm able to understand how the purpose of God, how he lined everything up for me. So moving forward, there's my first day of school picture. This was kind of a joke with my boss. Oh, sorry, let me go here. And here's my last day of school picture. I did that as a joke for my boss. Like, you got to do that for your first day of school. And so that was truly the first night that we were having class. And then this is today.
That's so cool.
All right. So moving forward, so I will be very clear here. There was a point in the process that I doubted if I wanted to be a coach. I could see all the other students seemed to get it. Things were clicking for them. And I felt like I was kind of struggling for anything to click for me. of course, this is comparison. And that's also the struggle with adulthood where I felt like, you know what, oh my gosh, they're so much better than me. And I'm so much, I'm one down from them. But it was in the practicum when this came together. I was struggling with a client. Were we in the practicums together? I don't know if we were. I don't think we were.
Mhm.
But I was struggling with the client, and I just felt like I was a failure as a coach. And Wendy, she was the one that was my practicum professor. She offered a different viewpoint of coaching where I thought, oh my gosh, it just kind of like lifted the weight off of me. My client was a little bit of a challenge, and he told me in one session, he said, I just need some accountability from you. And so Wendy said, she goes, sometimes that's what coaching looks like. And that small phrase just changed my perspective on everything about coaching. I was trying so hard to, get the coaching agreement, ask the right questions, and then have the closing that I lost sight of the fact that, okay, maybe coaching looks different for every person.
Mm.
So during this time, I was working. So that's the change that occurred, is when I was released from that burden of feeling like I had to be a perfect coach. But it was during this time that I was doing the practicum that I realized that I really love coaching internal clients. And so I think that's where my passion is. I want to stay in an organization and continue to coach internal clients so I can impact not only that person's leadership, but it can impact their department and the overall culture of the organization. As for external clients, that's still a question for me. I think I'll be able to occasionally. I don't know if I'm as passionate about, having a book of external clients more than I am, sticking with the internal clients. Okay. So for my personal legacy, as we're leaving this, the legacy that I want to leave behind is that people really matter. I hope that my legacy is that I speak words of life into people, that I love them for who they are and cheer them on as they're discovering their own path and dreams and passion. I want to empower others to be able to make the choices that they need and that they want. And I want them to feel that I have confidence in them when they may not have confidence in themselves.
Mm.
And I think that's it.
Yay.
There you go. Ooh, didn't expect to get all emotional.
Well, it's your heart.
Thank
It's like
you.
your heart on a presentation,
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, for sure.
Thank you for your vulnerability.
Yeah. That's
Um,
what I was saying when I texted y'all earlier. You're a safe place to be vulnerable.
good.
Yeah.
Felt the
Yeah.
same way. Okay, so I have a question.
Mhm.
When you talked about separation, which clearly was kind of birthed out of like some pain and trauma,
Yeah.
you talked about it being healthy. I could imagine that the flip side of that, being so fortified, could actually be a detriment too, right? Like all of our character structures have these shadow sides or whatever.
Yes.
How have you seen that separation have a negative impact in your life at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. There's times where I think I can be not as compassionate and understanding if someone's in a struggle with something. And so that's where I feel like the separation being so strong in that, because it's like, I'm like, well, I've been able to make it through this inside. This is what I'm saying. I'm not telling someone that, but you've got to push through and you've got to like be self-sufficient. And because, I think of a town hall that we were on where someone had said something similar like this, and Dr. Townsend said, oh, that's because no one met your needs of attachment. And I was like, oh, and so, I mean, yeah, he was like, no one was there for you.
Yeah.
And so I have to be very aware of situations because I want to be there and in the well with someone, but there are times where that separation is so strong that I'm just like, okay, like you deal with what you need to deal with, and then when you're ready, just come back. And it can be a lack of compassion.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You want to ask a question, Lisa?
I was, okay. So how So did you have surgeries to restore your hearing? Oh,
Yeah, so that was from 16 months to about almost 5 years old. I was really good at reading lips because I was 95% deaf in one ear and I think like 85 in the other.
Wow.
So I was deaf. And they put tubes in my ears. And so that stayed in. I mean, again, my parents didn't realize that for,
right.
a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so when they finally put tubes in my ears, I was able to start like hearing, and it changed everything.
Yeah, sure did.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
you?
but I didn't really put it together that that's where attachment was broken. Until like, I think that started when I started going through therapy. And then again, coming to the Townsend Institute, I'm like, oh shoot. That's
Yeah,
where
that totally
that's
makes,
Yeah, it makes
yeah,
sense.
that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Did you have was there relational impact for you within your family? Like, I guess maybe what I'm thinking is like with the feelings that you had being ignored, or
Mhm.
like did you have to do work to heal those, or like how is your relational, how are your relationships
Yeah.
with family today?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. So that was also something I could have gone into a little bit more in depth, but that was a big struggle for most of my life. Because my dad is also a pastor, or he retired. And so, in the formative time, well, when I was a child, I dealt with being deaf and all of that. And then in your formative years of, preteen young adult, my dad, and he'll say this, it's not, I'm not trashing my dad, but he had his priorities flipped to where the church was number one and then the family was number two. And so that's kind of how things were really, you know, again, I guess kind of even more broken.
Mm,
Is because that was there. Do we have a great relationship now? Absolutely. Like I'm really close to my family, my
mm,
siblings, I understand like we are very lucky because we like to hang out together. We like to, do things together. But also, are my parents the ones that I run to when I tell them my deepest, darkest secrets? No.
mm,
I go to my life group, and I go to my friends. Actually, my sister, going through the Townsend Institute, like that really created a huge level of depth in the relationship I have with my sister. She's the one who knows all my dirt in my
mm,
life. But she's also in my life group as well because she can challenge me. She can, talk, give it to me straight.
mm,
So the relationship with the parents is great, but it's not like super deep.
mm.
The relationship with my siblings, it is deep.
Sweet.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Did I answer your question? I hope I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. I have another one
Yeah.
too, but I keep leaving room for Lisa.
Go
'Cause-
ahead, Karen. Yeah, I was going to ask her what you asked her. So yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Well,
Keep
you
going.
mentioned too that one of the ways that you, I don't know if hid is the right word, but like, soothed or whatever the word is, was through some bad relationships and you had a lot of trauma there. Um,
Yeah.
how, how does your healing impacting? I mean, I know last time we talked, you even said you were kind of seeing somebody.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah, that is kind of a big thing.
how is, tell me about that change, or what are you feeling different, or,
Yeah, I mean, I think through like horrible, horrible relationships, and I was just, seeking out what I guess had longed for,
Mm,
from when I was in early adulthood. And so, like I mentioned in there, I did have a sexual assault in there as well, where, that really kind of spiraled everything down.
imagine.
And that was when I was 39, and so it's not like I was a spring chicken when any of that happened. So it was at that point that I was really kind of broken. Started therapy again, Jesus in therapy. And then when I get to the Townsend Institute, that's when it was kind of like, Oh, it's like much deeper than,
Mm.
just bad relationships. And it was understanding like the healing had to start, in the character structure.
Mhm.
And so by doing that, by having the strong relationships with my life group and my process group, it's crazy how close we've gotten in, a year and a half. That really created a lot of healing and a lot of safety, to where I felt like I could, be open to dating again. Because at that point I was like, I'm done.
Mm.
Um, don't want any of that. So, but I think it also helped me kind of prioritize what is important when I, choose to start dating someone. And there were certain things that I'm like, I'm not negotiating on this.
Mm.
And one of the things I had negotiated on in the past was, whether or not they were a believer.
Mm.
And so now, the guy that I'm dating, he's like, he is a believer. There's a lot of things in there that I'm like, well, this is a lot of things I had looked for, like, but kind of kept hidden, that now he's, here in my life. And now he's really kind of exploring more about his faith. And so it's really exciting that I'm like, okay, this is good. So I think it helped me realize the importance of me being healthy and me understanding like the priorities that are needed in order to be in a healthy relationship.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah. But,
Um,
alright.
I'm like, do you have another question, Lisa?
Yeah. The question that occurred to me is like, what, moving forward, what area of your life do you think needs the most focus
Mm.
to grow?
Out of the character structure.
Or, yeah, probably, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's good. So I think still in the adulthood, which is weird to say because I'm an adult. Um, that was my lowest scoring on the T-Prat, which was kind of surprising to me.
Mm.
I think that has, I almost went back and took it again because I wanted to see. And so when I saw that you did that, Karen, I was like, oh, I should have done that.
You still can. You still can
I know,
Yeah, you
I need
can.
that.
for free.
Just put Gilbert's name in there.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's free.
Yeah.
Oh,
Do it. Do it.
perfect. I'll do that. So I've grown in the adulthood area, but I still feel like I need to grow some more. But it's still just really coming to the understanding of, like everything else with the character structure being healed and still in the process of healing, to
Yeah.
be able to fully see, like, I know I've grown in that aspect, but to continue to do that,
Yeah.
that's the one area. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Maggie, you did such a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was tough. It was tough putting it together because when I was looking at the pictures, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it was
Emotional. Yeah.
Yeah.
so emotional. Because you look at the pictures and you're just like, oh, whatever. But then when you start to realize, oh shoot, this is what this kid was living through,
Yeah.
then it just brings it to life in a different way.
Yeah.
So
It makes
yeah.
it raw.
Makes sense
Yeah.
that you do this because I feel like it summarized, like it makes you really think through and reflect back
Yeah.
on it. Like even ironically, I was getting ready to leave town the day after Valentine's for a trip, and I said to Chad, I was like, "Will you listen to my presentation? Because I just wanted to run through it or whatever." And but it was so neat to hear him at the end. He's like, "I mean, I've seen you grow, but I didn't know all this,
Yeah.
And then I was with one of my life team members over the weekend at the beach, and I was like, "Hey, can I practice on you?" And even just to see, like, she was like weeping, and I was, and
Mhm.
she's just like, just to know how much, because she hasn't been on, she lives further away, so she's not in the day with me, but
Okay.
this, and to be like, yeah, you know what, it is a big deal. It's a big
Yeah.
deal. It's a big deal what we've gone through and grown, and it's really special. So,
Mhm.
and now we're done.
We're done.
Congrats,
Oh my
ladies.
gosh.
I can't even believe it.
I know. I'll stop our recording now.